Coffee. Sorry.
You got all American on us. You're drinking coffee?
Burst your bubble.
Oh my goodness, that's blasphemy. Is it good coffee or lame coffee?
Oh, it's good. Oh, it's good coffee. It's proper coffee.
Yeah, it's probably like Folgers.
It's not American coffee.
It's not all like fancy Guatemalan coffee.
It is, yeah. It's
good. Then maybe I do like your taste in coffee. I'm very picky about my coffee. Oh, look, we are live.
Welcome to the Coffee Podcast.
Welcome to the Bradbury Challenge, the podcast where three writers attempt to write one short story each week. My name is Maya Good, and I am here with Chrissy Moss and Gerald Brunsby. How are you guys doing? Gerald had a birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy late birthday to you. Happy late birthday to you.
Oh my God. Looking a bit rough for 21, aren't I? So.
Hey, you just keep turning 21 over and over and over. That's what I told my kids. It worked for a long time. For years, they'd be like, how old's your mom? 21?
21 and a bit.
That's great.
It's 21, like on the calculator.
On the other hand, I tell people my real age is almost 40. I'll be 40 next year, and nobody believes me, so.
Hey, it's nice to not be believed every once in a while. I keep getting these young pups trying to come on to me, and I'm like, sorry, I don't date. But I'm like, if I would, cougar gone wild. Oh my goodness, these young pups got some. They're very forward.
Okay.
So Gerald, how was your writing this week with your birthday and all of your extra dinners and celebrations? Were you able to get any writing done?
I got some done. And my wife left to go to a funny place. What's it called? America. She's gone to America. So just getting her off to the plane and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's been a busy old week. But I got writing done, of course.
Yeah. How many stories?
Oh, just the one. Just the one.
Just the one? That says you had a busy week, because usually you don't do just one. You've had a couple weeks recently that were just one, so you can kind of be on the busy side, huh?
Yeah, it's no good. I need to.
You're
supposed to make up for the other two of us who sometimes missed it.
Sometimes, many times. Hey, but at least we're writing. That's all that counts. We're writing, dang it. And for you, Chrissy?
I am a few paragraphs away from finishing the one I was working on this week. This is, I think I've talked about it before. It's my Halloween children's story that I have been working on for like years.
Oh, yeah. You wanted to finish it before Halloween so you could release it,
exactly.
Didn't you?
This is what I want to do. So it's like 6,000 words at the moment. So it's not a short. Well, it is short, but it's not like Gerald short.
No, not like
totally.
Mine are short. Very short.
So I worked on, like, my goal from last week. My goal was to work on outlining this short story that is more like has world building in it that I've never done before. And I managed to get some outlining done, and it's too big. So what I'm doing, I'm trying to do the Vonnegut rule. You know the Vonnegut rule? It's like you start the story after the story's already started, and you end it way before it ends, and you take a snapshot. And so I'm looking at all the things that are in this outline. I'm trying to figure out where can I show the most interesting part of the story in snapshot, so that instead of being 20,000 words, it'll be like 2,000. So that happened, and I had an amazing experience at Writers Group that left me completely dejected. And we can definitely talk about that later. I left there wondering if I'm capable of being a writer, if maybe I have no words, and I just need to go be a waitress for the rest of my life. And then I promptly got like the sweetest, most wonderful review on one of my short stories that made me feel a lot better. I needed to, I can't believe it. I looked at the review and I was like, I'm gonna cry. I'm needing it right now because I was starting to really have some self-doubt, and we can definitely talk about that later. So how was your guys' experience as writing? I mean, Chrissy, you're writing a story that you started a long time ago. How do you get back into a story that you put up for so long?
It was actually easier to get back into that than it was than anything else, because I haven't been writing much for the last couple weeks, so I have been struggling to get back into writing to where I'm writing consistently 1,000 words a day. Still not quite there again, and it's, you know, I got the new job, and so I have been readjusting to that schedule. So I'm starting to get there, but it's not been easy, because it's a weird schedule, and I don't get to see Greg very often. So when I do get to see him, I feel like I need to see him and not be writing or other things.
Yeah.
But
so when you start working on a story that you've already started, that's already like in motion, do you just read back through it? Like, how do you? Okay, you just read through it like once or twice.
I start reading it, and usually I start catching it. In fact, it's easier for me to do that for something that I haven't been working on for a while than it is to keep going forward on something that I have been working on currently sometimes. And that's because I'll get stuck on a story. But the one that I put aside for a while, it's new and fresh, and I will just pick it up and start going with it.
Yeah. That's interesting. I can't do that. As far as like my rough draft, if I'm going to come back to a story like months or even years later, that first pass has to be done. If I start a first pass and I stop like halfway through, and then I try to come back to it after, say, about 6 months, I can't get the same tone. Like, my writing style changes so much that when I come back to it, I have to start all the way over because my writing is totally different. And maybe that's just because I don't have the maturity of my voice yet that you have, because you've been writing a lot more and for a lot longer than me as far as volume.
Yeah, they say you should have over 1 million words before you really find your voice. And I've got over 1 million words.
And when you read my stuff, you can hear my voice. Like, my voice is very obvious, but my skill is changing significantly. And it's getting better. And so if I come back to something, I'm just in a totally different place. I can't like reconnect.
Right.
Yeah. How about you, Gerald?
I think you can, and it depends what you're reading at the time. I wrote something a couple of years ago after I read a light-hearted sort of travel book, and I wrote something that was very much in that same sort of vein. I was in that sort of mood. That's not my normal mood, but so yeah, you're right. I think your writing style changes, and yeah, I've got over a million words tucked away, and I think I have my voice now, and you don't sort of recognize it as a voice. You just write in a certain way, and that's the way you feel comfortable writing, and that's the way you feel you get the best results from your writing.
Well, it's part of learning how to write fast too, is finding how you write so that you just write, and you stop thinking about structure and tone and theme and everything. You just write. You just don't let those things work themselves out, and you just write. You can come back and fill those things in later, of course, in editing or creating.
But you got to get that first pass out of you.
Yeah, if you don't have a first draft, then what are you working with?
Yeah, exactly. You're kind of working with gobbledygook.
Right. And I found getting it out fast, the faster I write it, the better it is, and the less editing I have to do.
Yeah, I went back and I read the first couple chapters of a project I started when I was 19, and I have to say, my 19-year-old voice was very whimsical and daring. I'm like, where's that voice? I want that voice back. Dang it. I liked the 19-year-old me voice. It was daring and it was dark, but there was like a whimsical to it. There was like this lightness that's just toying with words and just playing with the musicality of words that I don't have anymore. And I'm reading this, I'm like, damn, I wish I could finish this, but I'm not good enough to finish this anymore.
Trying too hard.
That's funny.
I think sometimes you become over analytical as you're writing something, and I think, as Chris has said, if you can learn to write faster, then what comes out of you is just pure you. It doesn't pass by your internal editor, so it's the real you coming through.
I mean, it helps to have the basics down first before you do that, but yes.
And I think, like, when I approach my outlining, that's when I do all that work on theme and structure and everything, and then I write the draft, and then I go back and do my revision. And I think that works best for me. And this reminds me, Gerald, I was thinking about this. So our favorite short story magazine, Carve, has a premium issue that comes out, I think it's like every April or whatever. And right now it's a contest, and if you win, it's like $1,000, and it's like $17 to enter. Wow. And you have some very Carve-like stories. And so I was sitting there outlining another short story. I was trying to figure out a structure. Like I'm coming at the short story from a totally different area. I don't have a story. I have theme. I have a structure. I know what the effect I want it to be, and now I have to find a story that will work for that. And this is the first time I'm writing a short story specifically for a specific journal. Like, I'm writing a story in order to submit it to Carve, rather than writing a bunch of stories and saying, where can this fit? So I'm thinking, Gerald, when's the last time you submitted to a journal?
Many, many years ago.
Okay, well, you're going to submit to a journal in the next couple weeks.
Oh, no. Okay.
You just got to find the right one. But you've got some great, great stories, and your voice is so carved.
Oh.
Like, I think it'll fit well in there, so especially some of your stories that are really internal. So, yeah, I want you to take a look at the premium contest at Carve Magazine. I think it'll be a good fit for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I was like, I'm gonna write this story specifically for this, and then I thought, Gerald needs to watch Gerald win. I'm gonna be so pissed if he wins and I get like second place, or get like some horrible rejection letter. It's like, you suck. Don't submit to us ever again.
Take a look at this guy's writing. Maybe you could learn something from him.
Exactly.
Wouldn't that be the worst? Wouldn't that be the worst?
Oh, it would. But yeah,
Horrible.
I think you should, and I think that would be a really fun exercise for us. I would say the same to Chrissy, but her style is very different. It's like a very like literary, internal. Yeah, very, very. Well, I mean, it's named after Raymond Carver, so I think that kind of says like the tone they're going for, and I'm looking at this theme, and I've got this idea, and I have to figure out what story I can tell that best exemplifies that theme. I've got some ideas, but I'm tossing them around.
Cool.
So, yeah, that will be interesting.
Our listeners could
so did you guys
and see how we do?
Yeah. And any other listeners out there that write like literary kind of internally stories that you read them and you think, is this really fiction? You might want to look at this contest, because that definitely seems to be, wouldn't you say that's like Carve style?
That sounds like No Sleep. I don't know if either of you ever, Greg loves No Sleep. It's a Reddit forum where they write slightly thriller, scary stories that are very much centered in the real world. So that you're left thinking, is this real or not?
Yeah. Well, Carve, like a lot of the short stories in Carve could almost be, you look at them and you're like, is this memoir? But it's not, it's fiction. And they do actually have memoir in Carve. I found out, I did not realize that. They do accept nonfiction, but it has to be literary nonfiction, which I think is really interesting. I've never really considered that idea. I've written some like flash memoir, but it's totally not Carve style, so I wouldn't submit that.
Okay.
Yeah, I've tried writing memoir or autobiography, and yeah, no.
No. No.
It's really hard to get enough distance to be able to
Yes.
write that kind of stuff.
Yes, it really is.
And to find a focus for your story of yourself, and not just be a rambling diary
Yes.
sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It still has to have a theme. It still has to have a structure. It's still
Right.
a book.
And I know my past life is, entertaining, because I've been told quite often it could be on Jerry Springer and everybody would love it. But
Wow.
but at the same time, I cannot put it into a structured story.
Yeah.
It's just me rambling.
I could, and I will eventually, but probably not for a very long time. I thought about writing memoir, and I was like, no, don't want my kids reading this. But now they're older, and they're like, Mom, we know what you were like.
Oh dear.
Well,
I'm like, what little do you know? I still have surprises for you, young pup.
Oh dear.
They think they know me.
Yes.
But it's one of those things that when you're writing memoir, if you're going to be really, really honest, it's a little scary. You can step on a lot of toes. And I don't have much family. And the thought of doing memoir is really scary. And if I ever do it, it'll probably be something that I wait till everybody knocks off. And then I publish it. Like, it'll just sit in a drawer somewhere for 30 years, and then I can publish it. Wait till certain people have Alzheimer's and I got nothing to worry about. My kids can deal.
or write under a pen name and just don't tell anybody that it's you.
Yeah.
Use a
Yeah.
pseudonym.
Then you run into all kinds of other issues. Like, when it comes to memoir, you don't want to end up like that guy that wrote memoir and then tweaked a few things and got blasted all over the internet, called a liar and a fraud.
Right?
Yeah, it's a little scary. I don't know. Memoir is scary anyway, because even if you can like do the structure and everything, you still have to have enough emotional distance to look at yourself objectively and not have it just be, whiny violin.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying.
I objectively have looked back at my life and said I was stupid. So there you go.
Yeah, I made some stupid movements for sure. I think we all did. That's why I wouldn't redo my 20s.
Right.
So Gerald, will you tell us what your story is about?
Yeah, it's. I actually wrote it today, and I was driving back from.
You wrote it today. You wrote it today.
Of course it is.
You know what? If you weren't so adorable, I'd hate you.
Yeah. Just, Gerald last minute horns me. That's me. I always do things at last minute. And but yeah, I was just sort of thinking about writing and sometimes you just think, what can I write about? What can I write about? And I was listening to the radio driving back from somewhere, and there's a story about what? There was, somebody said something, and anyway, so yeah, there was a story on the radio about the Rosetta spaceship that's been looking at a comet, and they let it crash land on the surface of the comet, and I suddenly thought, how does the spacecraft think about that? What does he think about that? It's a bit of a shame. So it's either called Sentience or it's called Thoughts of Rosetta, and yeah, because Rosetta doesn't really know what's going on, and poor old Rosetta's crash landed on this comet all alone. It's a bit sad. So this is my little tribute to Rosetta.
You know what I'm thinking, because Rosetta Stone and Rosetta the aircraft, I'm thinking like Rosetta's Comet or something. Like you could do some wordplay with that title.
I think I've got about 700 words. So I've bashed that out, and then just before we came on air, there was another part that I wanted to put in near the start, so I put in a bit at the start. So, but I'm not sure there is something else I can do with the name Rosetta. So I obviously need to look at that. And but yeah, it was just an interesting thought.
Aw, poor
Unless
Rosetta.
it was like Well,
Yeah,
maybe
it's, it's,
person. Aliens in the future
Yeah.
finding it and taking it out into the sunlight where it
And
gets-
ode to Rosetta.
yeah. That's what it is.
That's wonderful. I love it.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, I worked on the outline for that story where the voodoo priestess decides to bring together all the heads of all the different types of tribal magic in order to fight the patriarch. No, I'm joking. Fight the man.
excellent.
No, can you imagine like all the Native American shamans, all the different African traditional religious shamans, all the Japanese shamans, all the South American shamans, all the Celtics getting together and being like,
You mean druids?
they're messing up the, yeah, all of them getting together and being like, let's run this shit together because they're making a mess.
Wow.
That's kind of a scary thought. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know, like all the ancestors that are pissed off at us all at once.
Your Christianity has ruined everything. Let's fix this.
I was thinking more your politics.
Yeah. Oh, very good.
I mean, it seems like we've got issues on both sides of the pond.
Oh, geez, do we ever?
We might be able to use all the help we can get, even if they do
Yeah.
come in the form of pissed off ancestors.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It's gonna
Yeah.
get worse before it gets better, sadly.
Mm,
Well, what prompted the idea was during not the last, but like 4 cop shootings ago. I know this is getting so bad that this is how I have to like define time. Like, which cop shooting? About 4 ago.
Well, now they're much more in the news.
Yeah, well, they've always been around, but regardless, about 4 ago, 4 big ones ago, not the little ones, the big ones, there was a push by one of the really large societies for African traditional religion, and they were doing a lot of ceremonies and whatnot, and it was like, whoa, what if they did that with all the Native Americans and all the South Americans and all the Celtics and all the Japanese people, and like pulled all the power of all the ancestors to make us correct the direction we're going in. And that's where my brain like went, you know. And then I had like that image of like Beyonce in that music video, and I'm like, yeah, that needs to be a story. But I don't know if it can be a short story. The outline I have is definitely not a short story outline. It is much bigger. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a sliver of that outline and write a short story with it.
Yeah.
And if I really, really like that short story, it may end up being a novel someday. But by writing out the outline, it was really interesting. Like, I had a lot of ideas in there, and I liked where it was going. Yeah, it's an interesting idea. Like, what would happen?
Yeah.
It's kind of scary, kind of frightening, actually.
What if?
So that's where that went.
That's what people say you should do as a writer. You should say, what if? Like,
yeah, what if? And that's exactly what happened. I was looking at this, and I was seeing all these posts of people checking in and saying they'd done ceremonies and talking about the hurricane that was coming. And I was like, wow, what if? What if this could be bigger? Ooh, what if this was like a really big like deal? And I started having those ideas. And then the story that I'm working on for Carve. Oh, mio, mio. Oh, mio, mio. So Carve has, like I said, this bent for literary stories that are really introspective, almost could be memoir, but they're not memoirs, they're fiction, but they're written in that way. They're really strong in theme and symbolism, typically. Wouldn't you say, Gerald? That's typical Carve.
Yes.
And so I was trying to come up with a way to approach a story that at its core, the core theme is dealing with, coming to grips with benefiting from privilege when you aren't supposed to be in that privileged group. So, and it's like, it's deep. Like, I'm dealing with race issues, I'm dealing with class issues, and I'm like, okay, so I don't want to do the funeral thing, because that's like the obvious thing. You have the adopted white mom die, and the black daughter comes in and has to like reconcile with the fact that, you know, she's in a better position for having been raised by this woman, even though when she's looking at her own group and seeing the issues with her own group. Like, that is the typical way to approach this. It's just so obvious and on the nose that it's kind of disgusting. So I'm trying to find a different way to approach this theme. And I've written down a list of ideas, and I'm just going to toy with them, do a couple outlines, see which one seems the most interesting, and then go for it. I think I've got, 4 weeks to write the story. So I want to have it written in 2 weeks. I have 2 weeks to really revise it and edit it and submit it to my writing group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good call.
I may call you in for emergency help. Be like, Gerald, I know there's typos in here. Help me find them.
Oh, yes.
That's my big thing after I'm all done doing the revision, finding all the little mistakes that I've added in as I've revised.
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah, because then I can't see them because you've been looking at it for so long.
Yeah.
So Gerald, have you gone to writers group this week, even though you were
No, I didn't.
birthdaying?
Because I'm on my own, and the sort of regular dog sitter was away on holiday, so I couldn't leave the dog for that amount of time. So I missed out on the group this week, but there's one next week that I'm going to, a different one. And
nice.
a critique group this week as well. Yeah, that was good.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm really liking my critique group. My last critique was very correct, and I completely agree with it. It was very painful, and it made me walk away going, I have no idea how to write all the words. I can't put the words together. Like that kind of emotion. One of the things that I wanted to bring up to you guys this week, because I was reading, what was I reading? I was reading one of Roz Morris's books. Let me get the full title because it's kind of a long title. The title of the book is, and it's really good. I was actually surprised. Remember last week I was talking about trying to find tools when you're writing literary fiction? This book, I think, is the only book I've read about craft that really applies to literary fiction. Like, doesn't just ignore it as like a side topic and says, well, take everything I've learned in this book and see if you can work with it. It's called Writing Plots with Drama, Depth, and Heart. It's part of her Nail Your Novel series. So as I was reading it, she was talking about show, not tell. And the way I've always had issue with the way that it was explained by a lot of people, and as far as having it make sense and having, like, a lot of times when I hear the word show, not tell, I'm like, well, what about these great literary novels? That doesn't apply. But the way she explains it totally does apply, and I thought that it was something that I wanted to bring to you guys. So the way she says is, one second. It says it also doesn't mean put this explanation into the character's mouth and have them say it. You can show that without making the character speak. It's about bringing the reader closer into the character. So seeing the world through their eye is like on a really, really tight scale. And I don't know. It was really interesting. Let me read this whole thing. Show, not tell is also misunderstood. It does not mean make a scene longer. You can show in just a few lines or short phrases. You know, and then she goes on to say, show, not tell is about the quality of the experience, the specifics. And it's like this, it's a lot, I don't know. She goes into it for about 400 words. But something about that really clicked for me because I was always explained, like, show, not tell. You know, if you have a character that you don't say they're feeling sad. You say, explain what they're feeling in that space and how what's happening around them affects them or whatever. And the whole idea is you should always show, not tell. And she goes in, the way she explained the difference between showing and telling really made made a case for when it's appropriate to tell. And
Right.
so when you're showing, you're wanting to bring the reader closer to the character. And when you're telling, you're wanting to bring the reader further away from the character. I thought that was great because a lot of times I haven't heard that balance. And I think that's where I've had the issue, because I read a lot of literary books. I read a lot of older books. And a lot of times, you've heard me say on the podcast, I feel too much distance in this story. I don't know why, but I can't get close to this character. Usually those stories are all very much about telling, but some of the things that we've been calling telling aren't actually telling.
Mm-hmm.
It's narrative showing. It's not the character saying this. It's not looking at every single thing. It's still showing, but it's about bringing that character in close. And I started reading this because last week when I was at my writers group, one of the ladies, let me see if I can get this verbatim. She says, I see in this section the same problem I saw last week, but now I see it much more clearly. When you're writing dialogue, I'm right in there with the characters and I understand what's going on, but your narration is choppy and it sounds like essentially like you don't read anything, which I do. I read a lot and I study a lot, but it was really choppy. It's really, really choppy. And the narrative portions are very, they don't read smoothly. And part of it is because I've done a lot of poetry. So I tend to have poetics in there, but then it's juxtaposed with like normal narration. And then I have a lot of, I don't know, like set pacing, like deliberately, like first he did this, and then he did this, and then he did this. And together it's not making a cohesive style, what she was saying. And then I read this and I realized it's because I haven't recognized how to do narration that is also showing instead of telling. That's where I'm struggling. So a lot of my narration, I'll have a little bit of showing and then I'll do a whole bunch of telling. Like, to me, narration equals telling. Somewhere in the back of my head, probably some old English teacher from like high school that's just jacked my head up has somehow put that idea in there. And it went into much more detail about showing in narration versus showing in dialogue or showing in, you know, the characters looking at something specifically. Like open things up for me.
Wow.
I just really, really want to recommend this book to any of our listeners, especially if you're writing literary fiction and you found a lot of the craft books out there. You're having a hard time finding craft books that really apply to literary fiction. I highly recommend this. Well, because I have it on my Kindle and I thought I highlighted everything, but it's all a mess, so I couldn't like go through it in a cohesive manner. But yeah, it was really enlightening. I read the same section like 6 times. And when I came away, I was like, okay, I can do that. I get what the problem was. Now I understand what the lady at the writing group was telling me, because that's the problem. I'm trying to show, but I'm showing in the wrong places, and I'm not showing deliberately. You know, I'm not saying this part of the story I want to bring the reader in close. This part of the story I want to bring the reader in further away. So I've got a part of the story where every single person that's read it says they can't sympathize with my character. The character doesn't need to be sympathetic, but the readers can't like understand her and kind of are put off by her. And I realize because I've distanced the reader from my character without meaning to. And then there are other parts of the story where everyone's like, who is this person? This is an amazing person. It's not an important person. Why are they so attached to this person? This person is hardly going to show up in the rest of the story. That's because I've let the reader get too close to that person, even though I don't necessarily want them to. So I thought that was like those light bulb moments that I have to credit Roz Morris with. I'm like, light bulb. That was really painful.
I think that shows that why it's important to read craft books and read as much as you can about writing, about the craft of writing and craft of storytelling, because you never know when, because sometimes you read some stuff and it's, oh yeah, I've read all about that, and you know, and the inciting incident and all that sort of yeah, I read all that, but then sometimes you come across something and somebody puts something in a certain way, you go, oh yes, like
That's the part I was missing the whole time.
yeah, like inciting incident. The phrase inciting incident, I understand it, but it just sort of means nothing. And somebody, I don't know who it was, but somebody I read a little while ago said, look at it like a trapdoor, that your protagonist goes through the trapdoor, they can't go back. They have to move on with the story. I thought, that's what it means. And then all of a sudden it clicks and it makes more sense. So
Yeah.
read lots of craft.
That's a great explanation for inciting incident. When I think of inciting incident, I think of like a chemical catalyst in like chemistry class, and you add a catalyst and it causes like some kind of chemical reaction. That's what I think of in my head when I think of the inciting incident. Like, what is going to cause this chemical reaction that's going to ripple through the rest of the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any favorite?
Said it was setting the tree on fire. You have
Yeah.
you have the cat in the tree, and then you set the tree on fire.
Yeah.
Aw.
Well,
Poor kitty.
that's because of Save the Cat. You're basically,
Yeah.
you're trying to rescue the cat that's in the tree, but the tree is on fire. So.
Do either of you have favorite craft books?
Yes.
Which one is your favorite?
Well, I have a lot. I like On Writing, of course, and there's one called Anthology, or is it Anthology? Or no, it's Bio of an Ogre. It's Piers Anthony's
Bio of an Ogre.
Yeah, it's called Bio of an Ogre, and it's Piers Anthony's autobiography. Which it's very interesting.
And it has a lot of craft in it.
It has some craft in it. Mostly, I enjoy the autobiography part where it's talking about how they went from being I write for fun to I'm an author, because that journey for everyone is different, and there's a lot to learn from that journey rather than just the craft part. Eat Shoots and Leaves is really good for craft.
Yeah.
And
writing, I tend to read on writing whenever I'm feeling dejected and like it's pointless and like I should just, go be a waitress. I can't say I get a lot of craft from On Writing, but I know a lot of people have gotten a lot out of his craft recommendations. But what I get from On Writing is this feeling of not being alone in the world, of having this experience of being a writer. Because sometimes that experience can be very lonely.
And I think also it sort of demystifies it a little bit, and you read that and you think, I can do this. It's quite it's quite invigorating. I mean,
as long as you come away with that idea, not the, I can do this, I just need to drink more.
All the other things that he did.
Let's not be a stereotype.
No. Is this a right thing? No.
But it's good to know that everyone goes through those struggles to get to I'm an author. Yeah,
exactly. Very, very cool. Gerald, do you have any favorites?
I have a whole raft of craft books. Depending on, I've got books on horror and mysteries and short fiction and a whole load of stuff. I think and stuff about criminal investigation and criminal mind and all sorts of stuff. So
see,
I think you get much more into the craft like me. Like you get into the nitty gritty of what is actually making stuff tick. Are you just like a more analytical type person?
I think so, because I went through this phase of having written a lot and not being happy with much of it, especially novel length stuff. I had, and I do have, some 30 odd sort of half finished works in progress, and because I get to a stage where I'm not happy with it and it's not going anywhere and it's not, so I sort of took a few paces back and then looked into the structure of novels, the structure of stories, and that led on to craft input. and I'm like almost like a sponge. I just soak up all this craft stuff, and some of it, like I said a little while ago, some of it just clicks and goes into your head, and you think, now I understand what I need to do. So
Yeah.
I think all prospective authors should read. Obviously, on every recommends On Writing. It is the book for writers, I think.
Well, I think that this book that I'm reading really should be much better known. Because as I'm reading it, I'm frequently getting these little epiphanies. And I read my first craft books in high school. I had a book, How to Write Your Novel. I must have been like 17. And it was a collection of essays by different writers on different parts of writing your novel. And I like those books. I tend to like a lot of the ones where it's different writers writing on different parts of writing.
Mm-hmm.
I find that a lot of times when it's a big craft book that's all like encompasses all the parts of writing by one author, that I don't get as much out of it. I like craft books that are on a specific topic. So like self-editing for authors, like that is an amazing craft book. It's on one topic. Or a craft book on outlining. I like it when authors narrow down and really get into one topic. But frankly, having read about half of this, I think that this should be up there with some of the greats. I do.
What the Ros
and
Morris book.
I don't put that. I don't say that lightly. You can tell she's been teaching writing a long time. It's really good. And I was not expecting that.
Yeah. And one other thing, I because I'm on my own this week, I've been watching some of my DVDs, which I don't normally get to watch. But the other night, no, they're not that sort of DVD. They're just.
Well,
you don't need DVDs for that. You have the internet.
They're things like The Lake House and stuff like that. And Sandra Bullock type stuff. But I was.
You watch chick flicks?
Sorry?
You didn't strike me as a chick flick guy.
Yeah, I do.
You like chick flicks. You didn't strike me as the guy that would like chick flicks.
Because they're incredibly well done. And I was talking to somebody the other day about this. And
are you saying women have higher standards for movie watching? Watch where you tread, Gerald.
I'm saying that the movies are very well made for what they are. And the ones with Hugh Grant in, like Four Weddings and a Funeral, Notting Hill. And you forget, you forget what a consummate actor Hugh Grant is.
Yeah.
He gets a lot of criticism, and he.
No, he's always been an excellent actor.
Yeah, he generally always plays the same character, but he does it so blooming well. But the point I was going to say that I what did I watch? Oh, The Proposal. That's right, The Proposal. Sandra Bullock and Ryan Reynolds, and but then I watched again with the commentary, and it had the commentary with the writer and the director.
Oh,
what a fantastic insight that was! I know it's about films, but it's about writing process.
Usually they don't include the writers on that. That's cool.
No.
Which movie was it?
That was The Proposal.
The Proposal. Okay.
And yeah, it's just it's a soppy film, but the commentary is really good, and they talked a little bit about the process of how they filmed things and how they went back to the writer and rewrote things, how they wrote something, checked it, approved it, rehearsed it, filmed it, and once they filmed it, no, it doesn't work. So they had to go back and rewrite it. So as a writer, you then that you can't just go blah, 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 and that's it. You have to have your alpha readers, your beta readers, and take the feedback and then think, yeah, actually, that does need to be changed. Don't be afraid to rewrite it, just to make it work better.
It's interesting that you said that, because I don't watch a lot of movies, and when I do watch movies, I tend to be really picky. And I recently was trying to find the old version of Rear Window because I hadn't seen it in forever, and I couldn't find it on Netflix, and I was broke, and so I didn't want to pay for it. So I watched the newer version, which was still really good. I think that was 90s, and I watched it, and it was amazing how good it was for a remake. I was really surprised. And then I started doing some research on Rear Window, and I found out it started as a short story.
Oh, really?
And there was actually a lawsuit over the short story that became a movie saying that Alfred Hitchcock maybe stole the short story.
Oh.
So I'm really looking forward to reading it, and I'm saving it. I'm not read it yet because I'm saving it for Literary Roadhouse. But
The name of the movie again?
Rear
the name
Window.
of the movie is Rear Window. It was originally directed by Alfred Hitchcock, and then they remade it in the 90s. Both versions are very good. And the name of the short story was It Had to Be Murder.
Ah.
Oh.
So yes, very, very interesting that we both had like some writing things, because I'm looking at these movies and I'm comparing them, my memory of the original, and then I'm reading about the short story. And I'm like, this will be really interesting to read the short story and then read the screenplay, because there's that website that has all those old screenplays on it, and you can just pick them up and read through them. And so yeah, I want to read both and compare them to see that difference.
Interesting.
I think a lot of movies are made from short stories. I know.
I think short stories lend themselves to being movies better than novels do. What do you guys think?
Often, yes. I know Philip K. Dick has tons of his stories have been made into movies, and mostly he wrote short stories. A lot of the science fiction is based off of some of his work. And
Raymond Carver's had a couple movies made out of his short stories.
And Stephen King, a lot of the better movies were short stories.
Short stories. Yeah.
Okay.
I think because novels are so big and sprawling, you have to cut out so much that it's harder to cut and keep the story than it is to add and keep a story. And I think short stories, once you make them into screenplays, they hit right around that 120-page screenplay mark. It seems like they're just like the perfect transposition, whereas you take a novel and it's like pointless.
You have to lose a bunch of stuff. Especially if it's a really thick novel, like say Interview with a Vampire.
Yes.
I was surprised how well they did with considering they had to cut so much of it.
They really did, and they managed to keep the feel of it. I don't know how they managed to do that, because it really shouldn't have been as good as it was, and it wasn't perfect, but it was significantly better than it could have been. That book was thick.
Yeah, I read that, and I love that one. It was a great book, but
I read it a lot as a teen. I loved it as a teen. I'm in the movie. Well, my shadow is in the movie.
Shadow is in the movie?
Yeah, at the very beginning of the movie, they pan over the street in San Francisco at right in the office where they're going to be when he's talking to the vampire. That office is kind of like triangular. My girlfriend's apartment was across the street, 3 lights up. And so you can see us through the window, but it's just our shadow. She can't really see us.
Oh.
Wow.
But we were in the theater, and then they kind of like shaded it out more in the DVD, but we watched it in the theater. I'll say, oh my God, that's us!
Wow.
That's hilarious.
I'll check IMDb and see if you're in.
I'm definitely not mentioned.
You checked. Wow.
Weird people in the apartment across the street. At least we had our clothes on, because sometimes that wasn't necessarily the case. When you're 3 flights up, you think you can get away with anything. So, you know. Right? Gerald's like, no comment.
No comment.
So since I worked on outlining of my 2 stories this week, I'm not reading. Gerald, are you going to read?
Yeah, if you want me to.
If you want to. The episode's already long, so if you want to, then you can read. If you want to skip, you can skip.
It's not. Yeah, it's not really.
It's not. It's not ready.
No.
No, he said last week it's not ready to watch. Then he's gonna read it. It's gonna be like fucking genius. Because that's what happens. He's like, yeah, I'm not ready. Oh, please read for us. And he reads for us. It's like, we hate you.
That's hilarious.
How about you, Chrissy?
I mean, it's a kid's story, but sure. Emily Pester.
I want a Halloween story.
It's a Halloweeny kid story. So Emily pressed her nose up against the costume shop window. A beautiful princess dress, complete with ruffled sleeves and pearl edges, sat right in the front display, next to mannequins dressed as giant chickens and a zombie. The price tag was upside down, so she couldn't see the price, but it didn't really matter. She already knew her mother could never afford it. The dress was something her mom called an unnecessary expense. It wouldn't provide food, shelter, or utilities, so they didn't need it. Not that her mother wouldn't do everything she could to get a nice costume. Her mom had gathered boxes and tinfoil one year to make her into a robot. She'd gone in pajamas with a teddy bear dragging behind her for another year. A black dress and a construction paper black hat with a little bit of green paint made her a witch another. Each year, something new and inventive and unusually free. There you go.
You have a great children's writing voice.
Sometimes.
I can't write children's fiction anymore, but that was lovely.
Well, thank you.
I can. What age group is that? Like middle grade or is it high elementary?
I'd say middle grade.
Yeah, it sounds middle grade to me too. I was just curious if my listening was matching up to your intentions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think kids will like that. Are you going to illustrate it?
I am going to try and get my daughter to illustrate it. Because
awesome.
My daughter is fantastic at art and I am mediocre.
Yeah.
Also, it takes her about a day to do a picture and it takes me about a week. So
yeah, there is that. Yeah, there's something handy about having an illustrator as a daughter, you know, coming from similar experience. Yeah. You can, and if they don't want to do something, you can pull the, oh, well, you know, I was in labor for so long and I sacrificed so much.
Oh,
so.
I'm going to tell her in the picture. I am perfectly willing to give her money for this.
Okay, so we need to have a writer's prompt. So
can it be that painting behind you? No, kidding.
Oh, no, because I can't post that. It's obscene. Well, parts of it are obscene. Okay, so here's your writing prompt. You look out your window, and in the apartment across the street, there's a man with wings.
There you go.
Wow.
There's your writing prompt.
Very good.
And I did it without showing the obscene painting of the weird god behind me.
Oh, believe me, he's been on screen.
But not the whole thing.
Flat.
My head does get in the way. My head does get somewhat in the way, so it's not
every once in a while
completely.
you like brush back your hair, and yeah.
We get the full experience of him trying to fertilize the universe. Okay. Well, thank you both for coming. And I want to tell all of our listeners, all of our watchers, thank you very much for listening to the Bradbury Challenge. If you want to listen to all of our shows and find out more about us, you can go to literaryroadhouse.com. Ciao.
Bye.